You will learn how to make boss fight, how you can make the boss in range, and then the boss just gonna attack on our player game object with more amount of chase speed and with other things. Once our boss loses a half of his health, and you will also learn how to work with a state machine and much more in Unity for complete beginners to intermediate people. Source code and the game will be available in the description box. And before I jump into the coding part, I want to thank Nenden Noorani, Joel Blankson, Shelly Staley, Kevin Cooker, Sanet Skethmin, dumb clips on the internet, and Tex for donating me on Patreon. And if you guys want to do that, you can do on Patreon, as well as you can buy some of my Udemy courses to help me on what I am doing. So you can support me, and by that you will unlock many benefits such as premium game source code and much more things. So without furthering delay, let's dive into this complete tutorial. I have created all of the animation clip of this boss enemy. So if I select my boss in the hierarchy, then move over to my animation tab, as you can see I have the walk 1. So if I click on this play button, we can see the walk 1, and we have the attack animation clip as well. And let's suppose you are not able to find your animation tab, then go over to window in the top and then move over to bottom says animation, and the shortcut key you can notice, which is control plus 6, and also the animator tab we have. So I already created this animation clip, as you can see we already have them. And now what we're gonna do now, if I move over to my animator, but before I do, let me explain what I have done already. So if I select my boss in the hierarchy, then move over to inspector, as you can see I attach a script called boss over here. And if I open up my boss script by double clicking on it, you can notice that I made the flip function, I made the die function, and also the on draw gizmo selected. Basically also I just created this take damage function, as you can notice. So if you want to create this, or you don't know that how you can create the animation and also how you can make the box collider 2D from this from this boss enemy game object, then I'm gonna have a video in the description. You can go and check them, and also the sprites just gonna available in my description, so you can go and check that out. So now if I select my boss and then move over to my animator tab, as you can see I have the boss attack, boss in range, and boss bug. So let's suppose a boss is working, means our player is inside this box collider 2D. That means this boss game object need to chase our player. And once this enemy is chasing, once this enemy boss is chasing our player game object, then it's only need to chase. And if the distance between our enemy boss or boss enemy and the player is too much close, then it's need to play the attack animation clip. And inside attack we want to do is want to do a thing, something like we just want to play the attack animation clip, we want to damage our player, and all of those things. And inside and let's suppose the health of this boss game object is half, then we want this boss a little bit aggressive. It should chase our player by now a little bit more speed, and it also should play the attack animation clip a little bit fast once our max health of this boss is half. So that is the thing. So now what we're going to do, we're going to make transition between these animation clips. So let's do that. From this boss idle we want to do the transition to our work. And before you do that, make sure you just move over to animator tab, and the left side you says you can see layer and then parameters. So click on this plus icon and create four parameters. One create two of them should be attack and the work. As you can see I already created by clicking on this plus icon, and then click on this bool, and you can name the parameter what you want. So create two parameters, one is attack and the another is walk. which I already created as you can see, and create two trigger parameters. One is in range and other one is the death one. So you need to do that, basically click on this trigger in the bottom and create two trigger parameters. So I hope you get the idea. And we're gonna use the state machine. Basically means that if we playing our state, basically if we playing work state animation clip, then in that state we want to do separate things. Like inside our work animation clip or inside this work state, what we want this enemy boss enemy to chase, and once it's get close enough, then it's the animation should be forward to this attack animation of this boss game object. And inside this boss attack we want to do separate things. So that's why we're going to use a state machine. Basically in different state we want to do different things. So that is the thing. I hope you get the idea. Now we need to make the transition between them. So I'm going to select my boss ideal, boss underscore ideal. Let's right click on it and let's make transition to boss work. And we're gonna select transition from this boss ideal to work. Let's go over to inspector and we're gonna uncheck the has exit time, because as soon as our player just gonna be in attack range or just gonna collide with this box collider 2D that we created from this boss game object, then it should play the work animation clip of this enemy game object. So I hope you get the idea. And if you don't know how you can create the box collider 2D from this enemy game object, then of course I will give a video in the description. You can go and check that out. Now we're gonna select the transition. Let's go over to inspector and we're gonna uncheck the fixed duration, and transition duration we're gonna set it to 0, because as soon as our player just gonna be inside attack range of this boss game object, then it should play the work animation clip right away. And if we scroll down, we need to choose a condition for it. So I'm going to choose this work condition. So I'm going to click on this plus icon and I'm going to choose if work is true. If that is the case, then what we just want to play the work animation clip of this boss game object over again and again. And let's suppose the player game object not inside in our attack range, then what we're gonna do, we're gonna make the transition from this boss work to our boss ideal. To do that, let's right click on this boss underscore work and let's make transition back to our boss underscore ideal. And let's select the back transition. Let's go over to inspector and we're gonna uncheck the has exit time, because as soon as our player not gonna be attack range of this boss game object, then this boss game object need to play the ideal animation clip right away instead of the working one. And transition duration I'm gonna set it to 0, and we need to choose a condition for it. So I'm gonna click on this plus icon and we will choose if work is false by now. So if we set it through our code this work to false, then this boss game object just gonna play the ideal animation clip. And also we need to make the transition from this boss underscore work to our attack. So let's do that. So for this we're going to choose our boss underscore work. So let's right click on it and let's make transition to boss underscore attack, and let's select the transition and we will move over to inspector and we're going to untick the has exit time because we just want to play it right away. And transition duration we're going to choose 0, and if we scroll down we're going to choose a condition for it. So first condition, I want this attack to be true. So I'm going to click on this play button, click on this play button. So I'm going to say if attack is true, at the same time work I just want to choose the false. So I'm going to click on this plus icon one more time and I will choose if work is false and this attack parameter is true, then it's gonna play the attack animation clip of this boss game object. And we also need to play the work animation clip of this boss once our boss is not too much close to our player game object. Means our boss need to play the chase or the work animation clip. So that's why we're gonna make transition from this boss underscore attack to our boss underscore work. So let's right click on it, let's make transition back to our boss underscore work, and let's select the back transition and we will go over to inspector and we're gonna leave the has exit time as checked, and exit time I'm gonna choose 1. 1 basically means over here we just want to play the attack animation clip 100%, and after that we want to play the work animation clip, so that's why we just leave the has exit time, and exit time we have chosen 1, and transition duration we're gonna choose 0, and let's scroll down. So now we're gonna choose that if attack parameter is false, so we're gonna choose if attack is false, so false, and at the same time I'm gonna choose a second condition. So let's click on this plus icon, and then we're gonna choose if work is now true and the attack parameter is false. If that is the case, then it's gonna play the work animation clip instead of the attack one. And we also need to make transition to this boss in range, as well as to our boss sorry, as well as we need to make the boss attack. So basically we need to copy this, basically we need to duplicate this animation clip. So I'm going to select my boss underscore work, let's press down control D to duplicate, and we can call this one boss underscore work. Instead of calling boss underscore work 0, I'm going to call it boss underscore speed work. Let's call it speed work, because this just gonna be the speed one, so that's why. So I'm gonna call it, and let's select the boss attack as well, and let's duplicate this animation clip as well. So we can simply press down control D to duplicate, and the duplicate we're gonna name it something like boss underscore speed attack. So let's call it boss underscore speed attack, something like that. And let's close that up with some sorry, we're gonna press down we're gonna hit enter in order to create that. And we also need to make transition from this boss attack from any state. If the enemy or this basically the boss game object loses half health, then it should play the boss underscore in range animation clip. And this period this boss game object is it's need to stop taking damages from our player game object. So that's why I just created a in range parameter in the left side, as you can see inside our animator tab. So we're gonna make the transition from any state, because let's suppose this boss is working, chasing, or whatever is doing, and if this enemy game object loses half health, then we just want to play the in range animation clip right away, or the aggressive animation clip of this boss game object, no matter what we're doing. If boss game object loses half health, then we just want to do it right away. So that's why we're gonna make the transition from any state. So let's right click on this any state and make transition to boss underscore in range, and we're gonna select the transition. Let's go over to inspector, and we're gonna uncheck the fixed duration, transition duration to 0, and we need to choose a condition for it. So we're gonna choose this in range condition. So let's click on this plus icon, and we're gonna choose in range. So if we trigger this in range parameter, then it's gonna play this animation clip. And now from this animation clip we want to play the boss underscore speed work, as well as the boss underscore speed attack, as well as the boss underscore speed work. So let's do that. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna make the transition from this boss underscore in range. So let's right click on it, and let's make transition to boss underscore speed work, and let's select the transition. Let's go over to inspector, and we're gonna uncheck the we're gonna leave the exit has exit time as checked, because we want to play the in range animation clip of this boss enemy game object 100%. So that's why we're gonna leave the has exit time as checked, and also exit time we're gonna choose 1, means 100%, and transition duration to 0. And let's scroll down, we can choose a condition for it, but I don't want to choose any condition. So once our in range parameter plays of this boss game object, then after playing 100%, then it's automatically just gonna play this boss underscore speed work animation clip. So that's why I don't want to choose any condition for it. And now we need to make transition from this boss underscore speed work to our boss underscore speed attack. So let's right click on it, boss underscore speed work, and let's make transition to boss underscore speed attack, and let's select the transition. Let's go over to inspector, and we're gonna uncheck the has exit time, and also we're gonna uncheck the fixed duration, transition duration to 0, and we need to choose the condition. So the first condition I'm going to choose if attack is true. So we're going to click on this plus icon twice because we want to choose two condition. So first condition I want to choose if attack is true, then we attack is true, then we gonna play the attack animation clip of this boss. And the second condition I want to choose if work is false. If work is false and the attack condition is true, if that is the case, then this boss game object now gonna play this boss underscore speed attack animation clip. And we also need to make transition back to our work. So we're gonna right click on this boss underscore speed attack animation clip, and let's make transition to back to our boss underscore speed work. And we're gonna select this transition. Let's go over to inspector, and we're gonna leave the hash exit time, and exit time we're gonna choose 1 because we want to play the attack animation clip 100%, so that's why. And transition duration I'm gonna set it to 0, and let's scroll down, and we need to choose the condition in which condition we want to play this animation clip. So we're gonna choose two condition for it. So let's click on this plus icon two more times. So first condition I'm gonna choose if attack is false, and the second condition I'm gonna choose if work is true. If that is the case, then it's gonna play this animation clip. And now we need to make transition to our death, and we're gonna make it from any state. Basically, if the boss game object loses all of his health right away, it should play the death animation clip of this boss game object right away. So that's why we're gonna make the transition from this any state. So let's right click on this any state and make transition to boss underscore death, and let's select this transition. Let's go over to inspector, and we're gonna uncheck the fixed duration, and we're gonna set the transition duration to 0. And if we scroll down, we can choose the date trigger, but I'm gonna choose a bool parameter for this. So I'm gonna move over to my animator tab, then parameter. Let's click on this plus icon, and we're gonna choose a bool parameter, and we're gonna call it something like death. And I'm gonna delete this trigger parameter of our death. So let's right click on it and then delete, and I'm gonna rename this by double clicking on it. So I'm gonna rename to date. So now we're gonna choose this date parameter. So let's click on this plus icon in the condition in the inspector, and then we're gonna choose if date is true. If that is the case, then it's gonna play the death animation clip of this boss game object right away. And now we need to play this animation clip. So I'm gonna open up my boss script by double clicking on it, and as you can notice, I already have a reference to my animator component, as you can see. And we setting is player in attack range to true, basically means the box collider 2D that we created from this boss game object. It's a player game object just colliding with that means we need to play the work animation clip. So basically we need to set the work parameter to true. So let's go over to a script, and over here in the bottom I'm gonna do. So let's make this if condition. Let's make first bracket and some curly brackets, and what we're gonna do over here, we're gonna check is if our is player in attack range is true. Means that player game object just collided with that box collider 2D of our uh, s- uh, player game object just collided with our box collider from this boss game object. So now what we're gonna do, we're gonna set that at a work parameter to true. So we will go to animator, and we're gonna use that dot set bool function in order to set the bool. And as a first argument inside quotation, it's gonna take the parameter name, and the parameter name is work, so we're gonna pass that. And the second condition, we need to set the value, so we're gonna set it to true. And let's close that up with semicolon. And let's suppose the player is not inside an attack range of our boss game object, then else if our player game object is not inside our player game object if our player game object is not inside our attack range of that boss game object, then we need to stop playing the work animation clip. So we also need to set back this work parameter to false in order to play the ideal animation clip of that boss game object. So we will go to animator, and we're gonna use this set bool function. And as a first argument inside quotation, it's gonna take the parameter name, which is work. And the second condition, we're gonna set it to false. false basically means unchecked, and we do know as soon as we're gonna set it to false, it's gonna play the it's gonna play the simply you can say simply you can say the ideal animation clip. So as soon as we're gonna collide with this box collider 2D that we created from this boss game object, then this boss just gonna play the work animation clip. And once we're gonna outside of this box collider 2D of this boss game object, then it's gonna play the ideal animation clip because we have chosen that condition. So now let's see. So let's click on this play button in the top in order to play our game, and let's take a look on this. So just wait a moment and you will see that. So now if we get inside this box collider 2D, we can notice it's playing the work animation clip over again and again. And if we move over to animator tab, we can see work is ticked. And if we get outside of this box collider 2D, we can notice by now it's playing the ideal animation clip of this boss game object. So I'm gonna get out of play mode. So once this boss game object is playing the work animation clip over again and again, then we want this boss to chase our player game object. So that's why we're gonna add a script, and that's gonna be different, and we're gonna use state machine for that. So simply what we need to do, we need to select our boss underscore work state or this animation clip inside our animator tab. Then go over to inspector, click on this add behavior and new script in the bottom, and name the script something like boss underscore work state, something like that. You can just name it. So I already created that, and then click on this create and add in the bottom. So as you can see, I already created that one. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna open up my that script by double clicking on it, and it's gonna open that up. So as you can see, so it's kind of seems a little bit weird. So what we can do, in the bottom we can see two function, so we can simply remove that, and we don't need, and we only need this three function. We need this one and this one, and we can simply remove this forward slashes to use that. Sorry, I'm gonna remove this forward slashes in order to use that, and I'm gonna do the same thing over here. Let's do that manually, and you can follow the shortcut key as well, which is control, I guess. So I don't know, you can manually do that. And if you want to use the shortcut key, then just google it, or you can just go over to unity form, then you can just find that out. So this over here, it's gonna work like as a start function, which is on state enter, as you can notice. And this over here says on state update, it's get called every single frame as like update function. And this in the bottom gets called when we trigger, basically once we are out from that state. So let's suppose we just playing from this work to our attack. So once gonna be it's out from this work, then this function over here in the bottom, it's gonna get called. So this over here in the on state enter function just get called as like start function. So it's called in the start of the game. And this one over here on state update, it's get called over again and again as like update function. And the bottom one gets called when we just exit our that animation clip. So it's get called one time when we just exit our from that animation clip. So now what we need, to chase our player, we need our player game object position. So we need a reference to our player position. So let's go over to script and let's go to top of our class. So we need to grab our player position. To get that, we're going to use this public, and the position we do know we need to use transform, which is responsible for position, and we can simply call it player position, or let's simply call it player, and let's close that up with semicolon. And also we need to also what we need a retrieve distance as well. Basically once we are too much close to our player game object, we just want this boss to stop or something over here, then this boss game object need to play the attack animation clip instead of the walk animation clip over again and again. So we're going to create a retrieve distance for that. So we're going to make a public, and that will be float, and we're going to call it retrieve. So let's call it retrieve, a retrieve distance. So let's call it retrieve distance, and by default I'm going to choose something like 2.7f, something around that, and let's close that up with semicolon. And now what we're going to do, we're going to move over to this override on state update function. And over here what we're going to do, we're going to chase our player game object. And in order to chase that, what we can do, we don't have the direct community. একটু সাউন্ডটা কম আর একটু মিউট করে রাখতো। So what we're gonna do, over here we just want to chase our player game object. So we can notice that inside this first bracket we can see we have the animator. So we can use this animator component in order to access our boss enemy, basically this boss game object current position. So if I move over to my Unity editor and then select this boss, we can just get access to our transform component of this boss game object, and we can use this animator component for that. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to animator, then transform, then dot position, and we're going to set equal to this. So animator dot transform basically means we basically going over to this boss game object animator component, basically this animator component, and in the inspector as you can notice. And by this animator component we simply accessing the position of this enemy game object. As you can see, firstly we going over to this animator and we accessing this transform, and then accessing this position as you can see. So now we're gonna set the position of our boss equal to vector2 dot move towards. So to change that, we're gonna say use this vector2 dot move towards function. And this vector2 dot move towards function, as a first argument it's going to take the current position, basically where you right now. So I'm going to pass animator dot transform dot position, and animator dot transform dot position, we do know that it's basically means the current position of our enemy game of sorry boss game object itself. And the second thing, it's going to take the target position where we want to go, or where which game object we want to chase. So since we want to chase our player, so I'm going to pass my player dot position, which we grab the reference in the start over here as you can notice. And the third argument, it's gonna take the chase speed. So we will go to top of our class and let's make a variable for that as well. So let's make a public float, and we're gonna call this one, sorry, for float, and we can call this one chase speed. So let's call it chase speed, and by default I'm gonna set it to something like 2f or 2 unit. And now as a third argument I'm gonna pass my chase speed, and make sure you also multiply this with time dot tilde time. So I'm gonna multiply with time dot tilde time, and let's close that up with semicolon. So we're just going over to animator dot transform dot position. Basically we just going over to this boss game object animator component, and by this animator component we going over to this transform and accessing the current position of this boss game object. And we setting the boss game object current position equal to vector2 dot move towards function. And we do know that this function over here it's gonna make the chasing. So as a first argument, it's gonna take the current position. So we pass animator dot transform dot position, basically means the current position of that boss game object. And the second thing, we just passing our player position as you can see. And the third argument, it's gonna take the chase speed. So it's just gonna chase our player game object. But before we chase, we just want to check the distance between them, distance between our player and this boss game object. If it's greater than retrieve distance, basically means this boss game object is not too much close yet to our player game object. So in that moment we want to chase. But if the distance between between them is too much close, then we don't want to chase at all. So that's why before we chase, we just want to check the distance between them. For that we're going to use this if condition. let's make first bracket and some curly brackets. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna check. So we need to use this vector2 dot distance function in order to check the distance between them, and then make this first bracket. And this function vector2 dot distance function, it's gonna take two position and it's gonna compare between them. So first position we're gonna pass itself, so we will go to animator dot transform dot position, basically means current position of that boss game object, comma second thing, we're gonna pass our player position. So we're gonna simply pass player dot position, and if the distance between them, if it's greater than retrieve distance, basically means that our boss game object is not too much close yet to our player game object, then what we're gonna do, we're gonna chase. So that's why we're gonna put this line of code which is responsible for chasing. So we can simply press down Control X for cut, and we're gonna paste it over here by Control V. So we're not gonna chase, and let's suppose that distance between is now too much close, basically this boss and this player is now too much close. Now what we're gonna do, we basically want to play the attack animation clip instead of playing the work animation clip over again and again. For now we're gonna print out a message. So else if the distance between them is too much close, basically it's not retrieve distance, it's lesser than means too much close. Now we're gonna attack. For now I'm gonna print out a message, so that's why I'm gonna type debug.log, and I'm gonna say something like attack on player, or let's say something like play attack animation, play attack animation, or animation of boss game object or boss enemy, something like that. And let's close that up with semicolon, and we're gonna press down Control S to save our script. And now let's head over to Unity editor, and you gonna able to notice that. So if the distance between between them, if it's greater than retrieve distance, then what we doing, we just chasing our player. But if the distance between is too much close, then we're gonna see a message in our console tab says play attack animation of this boss enemy. So just wait a moment, and once our compilation is done, we can just go ahead and check that out. So I'm gonna select my console tab, and let's click on this play button in the top in order to play our game. And let's get inside box collider 2D of this boss game object. So let's have a look on it. So I'm gonna get inside this box collider 2D of this enemy game boss enemy game object. So let's get in. So we can see we just chasing, and we basically we need to assign. So we're gonna get out of play mode, and we forgot to do one thing, is that if I move over to my animator tab and then select this boss in the hierarchy, and select this boss underscore work animation clip, then go over to inspector, we can see underneath our boss underscore work state says player non-transform. Basically we just forgot to drag our player into this player slot, basically player transform or the position. So we're gonna take our player in the hierarchy, and let's drag it over to that field, and we're not able to drag it. So what we gonna do for that, we're gonna open up our boss underscore work state, basically enemy a clip, and over here we're gonna use that. So this over here we do know it's gonna work like as a start function. So this function get called in the start of the game. So in the start of the game, what we're gonna do, we just want to grab the reference of our player position. For that we need to use this game object dot find game object with tag. So make sure you just use this function. So game object dot find game object with tag, and this function inside these brackets inside quotation, it's gonna take the parameter it's gonna take the tag name. So since we're looking for our player, so inside quotation we need to pass the tag name. But before you pass, make sure you just move over to Unity editor and select your player in the hierarchy, then go over to inspector and assign the tag. It will be untagged, so just click there and assign with your player tag. And as you can notice, I already assign it my player as a player tag in the note, you can see in the inspector. So I already assign it, so I'm gonna pass my tag name which is player. And now what we're gonna do, we're gonna access the position. So we're gonna type this dot transform basically position. And now we're going to close that up with semicolon. So what we're doing simply, we basically finding our player game object with the tag called player name, and we basically taking this transform. And now what we're gonna do, basically transform which is responsible for position, we're gonna take this and now we're gonna store it into this player transform variable that we created over here. So we're gonna take our player position and now we're gonna store it inside this player transform variable, and we're gonna set equal to this. Basically we're taking this player game object transform by finding with game object with tag, we're just taking that and we storing inside this player transform that we created over here. And now if I press down control s on my keyboard and then move over to unity editor, even though if we didn't assign that with that, we still able to notice our enemy just gonna chase our player a game object right away as soon as we're gonna get inside of that boss game object box collider 2D. So just wait a moment. And now if I move over to animator tab and select this boss in the hierarchy and then select this state which is boss underscore work animation clip, and then move over to my inspector tab, and underneath we can see boss underscore work state and it says player non transform. So I'm going to click on this play button in the top in order to play my game. You will notice as soon as our game just gonna start, this parameter just gonna get assigned automatically because we just grabbing the reference of our player position in the start of the game. And we can notice that, and if we still not so as you can see it's basically doing that thing and it's fine. But the problem is that enemy is not stopping, basically it's not stopping, and it's basically stopping if some period of time. So we also need to call the flip function as well. So I'm gonna get out of play mode and it's stopping. Basically it's playing the work animation clip over again and again, which we really don't want to play. So we also need to flip our anime. To flip that, I'm gonna open up my boss anime script. So by double clicking on it, and I will move over to my update function, and I'm gonna call the flip function that I created inside my boss script. So I'm gonna call it over here. So let's call the flip function by flip function, and let's close that up with semicolon, and let's press down Ctrl S to save our script. And now let's move over to Unity editor, and we also need to make a parameter called a speed animation, something like that, or animation speed we're gonna create, because once we move over to in range and then play those animation clip, then I want this boss anime game object to aggressive, so it should play the work and the attack animation clip a little bit fast. So that's why. And we're gonna open up I'm gonna open up my boss underscore work state script, and let's go to top of our class and let's make a variable for that as well. So I'm gonna make it something over here. So let's make a public, and this will be float, and we're gonna call this one animator speed. So let's call this one animator underscore speed, or let's simply call it animator speed, and let's set equal to something around 1f, which is the normal speed. And now I'm gonna press down Ctrl S one more time in order to save my script. And now let's move over to Unity editor. And once we so what we need to do, instead of printing out message, we just want to play the work animation clip. And we do know that in order to play that, what we need to do, we basically need to set those parameters. So just wait a moment, and once our compilation is done, we can just go ahead and check that out. So I'm going to move over to Unity editor, and if I select from this boss underscore work to our boss underscore attack, if I select the transition from this boss underscore work to attack, then go over to inspector and scroll down. So what we need to do, firstly we need to set this attack parameter to true, as you can see, and after that we need to set the work parameter to false, so it's gonna make transition from this boss work to our attack. So let's go over to our script. So instead of printing out message, what we're gonna do, we're gonna go over to animator. So we have the animator reference. Basically we simply, you can simply call that we just going over to this boss game object animator component, and we're going to use this dot set bool function Why? Because if we move over to Unity editor, because this parameter we can see inside our animator tab in the left side is a bool parameter. So that's why we need to use set bool function. And inside quotation as a first argument, it's going to take the parameter name. So I'm going to pass attack, and the second thing comma, it's going to take the value. So I'm going to set it to true, means we just setting it to true, and we do know true, or we if we set it to check or true, means it's gonna play that animation clip. And the second thing, we need to set that walk parameter to false. So we will go to animator, and we're gonna use that so set bool function. And now we need to pass the parameter name, so in our case walk, and we need to set this parameter to false. So we're gonna set it to false. And now let's close that up with semicolon, and let's press down Ctrl S to save our script. And now let's move over to Unity editor, and you will see that once our this enemy game object, sorry, this boss enemy game object just gonna be close to our player game object, then it's gonna play the attack animation clip, this boss attack animation clip over again and again. And I want to choose the retrieve distance a little bit more. So I'm gonna select my boss underscore walk inside my animator tab, this animation clip. Let's go over to inspector, that's then boss underscore walk state. So I'm gonna make the retrieve distance something around, let's do it 3, let's do it 3.2. And also I want to increase the size attack range of this boss enemy. So I'm gonna do it in the x something around 20, something like that. And I'm going to take my player, and let's drag it a little bit further away from this enemy boss enemy game object. And I'm gonna so this just gonna be fine. So I hope you get the idea. And now let's click on this play button in the top in order to play our game, and let's check that out. Just wait a moment, and you're gonna able to notice that. So now let's get inside this box collider 2D. So we can notice it's chasing our player, and once it's closed, we can notice that it's not playing the it's not basically what we need to do. We need to play the attack animation clip. So it's stopping, but it's playing the work animation clip over again and again. So I'm gonna get out of play mode. For that, what we're gonna do, we're gonna select the transition from this boss underscore work to attack, and select that transition. Then go over to inspector and remove this one condition. Basically, remove the work one and make sure you have the attack one. So I'm gonna select the work one, and let's click on this minus icon in order to remove that. And now we're gonna move over to our boss underscore work state class. Basically this boss underscore work state class, which is state machine behavior. So what we're gonna do now, we're gonna remove this animator dot set bool and the work to false. So we're gonna remove that, and we're gonna press down Control S to save our script. So once you making transition from your boss underscore work to attack, make sure you just choose only one condition. You have to choose the attack one. So make sure you choose only one condition once you making the transition from this boss underscore work to attack. And we also need to do the same thing from this boss underscore attack to our boss underscore work. So we're gonna choose the back transition, then go over to inspector. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna scroll down, and we're gonna choose basically we're gonna choose the attack one, and we're gonna remove that. And we're gonna choose this one if work is true. So we're gonna say choose the attack which is false. So we're gonna select that, and let's click on this minus icon in order to remove that. And now if we just go ahead and then click on this play button in the top in order to play our game, and you will able to notice it's gonna work fine. So just wait a moment and you will see. So now it's gonna do that thing. Let's get inside, and now it's gonna play the attack. As you can see, indeed it's playing the attack animation clip. But once we are not in attack range, or basically we are further away from this boss anime game object, we can notice that it's just playing the boss underscore attack animation clip over again and again, which we really don't want. So we're gonna get out of play mode. So that's why we're gonna add another script to our boss underscore attack, a state machine basically. So we're gonna select our boss underscore attack inside our animator tab, then go over to inspector, click on add behavior, and name it to something like boss underscore attack state. Then click a new, basically click on that new script, and then call it something like boss underscore attack state, and then click on this create and add in the bottom, which I already done it, as you can see. So I'm gonna open that up by double clicking on it, and we're gonna do the same thing. So basically I'm gonna remove these two function in the bottom, and we're gonna use this three function. So let's remove this forward slashes. So I'm gonna remove that, and let's do the this one, and I'm gonna do the this one, this and this, and let's do the thing over here as well, and it's now fine. And we're gonna press down Control S to save our skip. And we do know that we need to grab the player position, and to do that we can make a public, and we don't need to make it public. Instead we can make it private, because we're gonna grab the reference of our player position in the start function or on a state enter function. And we do know that this function get called in the start of the game. So we're gonna grab the reference. So we're gonna make a private transform which is responsible for position. So I'm gonna call it player, something like that. And also we're gonna make what we're gonna make, we're gonna check the distance between them. So we're gonna make a retrieve a parameter. So let's make a public float, and we're gonna call this one retrieve distance. And by default I'm going to choose something around 3f or 3 unit. And also we need the animator speed, with how much speed we just want to play our animation clip. So I'm going to make a public float, and I'm going to call this one animator speed, something like that. And by default I'm going to set equal to 1f, which is normal speed. And what we need now, so we're going to move over to our start function, basically on state enter function. And we do know this function get called in the start of the game. So in the start of the game I'm going to grab the reference of my player position. So I'm going to use the same function, which is game object dot find game object with tag. And inside we need to make these brackets, and inside quotation we need to pass the tag name. So in my case player, and then we just going over to player game object. And now I'm going to access the transform, which is dot transform means position. And now I'm going to take my position, and we're going to store it into this player private transform player that we created over here. So in that we basically taking our player position, and now we're going to store it into this player transform or player transform or position variable. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to move over here. And what I'm going to do over here, we're going to check the distance between them. And now we're going to use this if condition. Let's make first bracket and some curly brackets. So now what we're going to do, we're going to check the distance between them. So to do that we're going to use this vector2. So let's use this vector2 dot distance function. And this distance function, we do know it as a first argument, it's going to take the it's going to take the position which we want to compare with. So we can simply pass our first position as enemy position as a first, but it doesn't matter. We can simply pass as a first argument player dot position, and as a second argument we can pass our enemy position. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna pass our enemy position. So for that we will go to animator component of our boss enemy. Then we're gonna move over to transform, then we're gonna access the position. So if the position between them, if it's greater than retrieve distance, means our boss enemy is not too much close yet to our player game object. So in that moment what it's need to do, it's need to stop playing that animation clip, which is the attack one. So to set that we will go to animator component, and we're going to use that set bool function. And we do know that as a first argument it's going to take the parameter name as a first argument. So So in our case that work, so we need to set this work as a true. So that's why as a first argument inside quotation, I just pass the parameter name, and the second thing comma, it's gonna take the value. So we're gonna set it to true, and we do know if we set it to true, and make sure you just close that up with semicolon, then it's gonna play the work animation clip, or basically the chase animation clip, instead of the attack over again and again. And I'm gonna press down Control S to save my script. And now let's move over to Unity editor, and we will able to notice that. So now it's done. And retrieve distance, we can see we have chosen 3, and you can increase the value. And if I select my boss underscore work inside my animator tab, basically this animation clip, then move over to inspector boss underscore work state script, we can notice that retrieve distance we have chosen 3.2. So I'm gonna choose the same retrieve distance. So I'm gonna select my boss underscore attack inside my animator tab, basically this animation clip, and let's go over to boss underscore attack state script, and I'm going to choose the retrieve distance 3.2, as I have done it there. So now I'm going to click on this play button in the top in order to play my game, and let's take a look on it. And this state machine, it's pretty much useful to use it over here as well. So just wait a moment. So we need to choose single condition instead of choosing a double condition. So if I get close, it's gonna play the work animation sorry, attack animation clip, as you can notice. And once we are outside, outside that, we're not able to see that. So we need to get out of play mode, and we have done a mistake. So I'm gonna choose the transition from this boss underscore attack to boss underscore work. So let's go over to inspector, and we can choose we can see that we have chosen if work is true. And if I move over to my script, work is true, as you can see. So we're going to choose the second condition. Basically, we also need to choose the second condition. Basically we're going to choose a second condition since it's not playing, or we just got a little bug, so that's why. So I'm going to select this arrow, go over to inspector, and we're going to choose. So let's click on this plus icon, and we will choose if attack is false. So we also need to set this parameter through our code. So let's move over to script. So I guess, okay, so we're gonna do it over here. So let's go over to animator, and let's use this set bool as a first argument inside quotation. It's gonna take the parameter name, which in our case attack, and the second thing comma, it's gonna take the value, so which in my case false. And let's close that up with semicolon, and press down Control S to save our script. And now let's move over to Unity editor, and now it's gonna be fine. And if it's still not working, then you can just remove this work condition from here in the inspector, and it's gonna be fine. And we can choose a little less number retrieve distance. So I'm going to choose my boss underscore attack. Let's go over to inspector, and retrieve distance, I'm going to choose something around 3. And now let's click on this play button in the top to play our game, and let's take a look on it. And if we get closer, it's playing the attack. And if we get little bit far, as you can see by now, it's working fine. So once we going back over to work animation clip, so make sure you choose double condition instead of the choosing one. And once you making transition from your work to attack, then make sure you just choosing one condition. So if I get out of play mode, and if I select the transition from this work to our attack, then go over to inspector, scroll down, we can notice we have chosen only one condition. So once you making the back transition, make sure you choose the double one instead of the work one. And once you making from this work to attack, make sure you just choose one condition. And now we need to trigger this in range parameter, through our code once this boss enemy game object loses half of his health. So I'm gonna move over to my boss script, and which I have created, basically the attack take damage function, as you can notice. So I'm gonna call this function inside my player script. So I'm gonna move over to my player script over here, and I'm gonna call that function. So over which I already calling, as you can notice. so we don't need to call it. So if I move over to Unity editor and then select this boss in the hierarchy and go over to inspector, we can notice the max health of boss I have given 5, as you can notice. So I'm going to click on this play button in the top and let's damage this boss game object. And once it's gonna loses half of health, once we're gonna start attacking on our boss game object, it should take damage from our enemy, from our player game object. So let's take a look on it. So I'm gonna attack on enemy, and we're not able to see that. Basically we need to call the function, so let's do that. So let's go over to player, and we calling it over here. So we need to call the attack function, take damage. Okay, so let's select our player script and then boss. So basically we do it's working fine, but we are not calling the take damage function. So if I move over to my boss script, we calling the take damage function here. So I'm going to remove this and let's press down control S. So it's not taking damage. We basically over here we need to do that. So from this max health of our boss game object, I'm gonna subtract my damage, and let's close that up with semicolon, and now it's gonna work fine. And let's go over to Unity editor one more time. Basically I just forget to subtract from our max health of that boss game object this damage amount. So now let's move over to Unity editor, and if you want to learn more about that, of course I will have some videos in the description. You can go and check that out. So now I'm gonna select my boss, and by default I'm gonna give something like 6 unit of health, something like that. I'm gonna do that. So I'm gonna select my boss, and I'm gonna give max health something like 6, and let's click on this play button in the top to play our game, and let's take a look on it. So I just forget to call my take time. Basically I just forget to subtract from my max health my damage amount of this boss game object. So I really apologize for that, and now it's gonna start taking damage. So if I attack on it, so as you can see underneath our boss script in the inspector, the max health is 5, and once we damage one more time, then we can see it's became 4, and one it's became 3, then 2, then 1, then 0. So once it's hit 0, then it should destroy. So I'm gonna get out of play mode. So once our this boss game object loses half health, then what we want to do, we want to play the in range animation clip. And to play that, we do know that if I select my boss and then move over to my animator tab, then we need to set this in range. We basically need to trigger this in range parameter, and we do know that once we're gonna trigger that, it's gonna play the in range animation clip of this boss game object. So now let's move over to our script, and over here I'm gonna check that. So before we subtract our damage, before we subtract max health from our boss game object, we just want to check. So I'm gonna make some first bracket and some curly brackets, and what we want to check, we just want to check if our max health, if it's equals to 3. But instead of hard coding that, let's go to top of our class and let's make a variable for that, which I already created over here, which is public in range amount, as you can see. In range amount, which I already created, and by default I have given 3, as you can notice. So I'm gonna check if the max health of our boss game object, if it's equals to our in range parameter. So in range amount or in range amount parameter, and by default we have chosen 3, as you seen. So now what we need to do, we need to trigger that parameter, which is the in range, and we do know that once we're gonna trigger that, it's gonna play that animation clip. So we're gonna go to animator component, and now we're gonna use this set trigger function in order to trigger that parameter. Then make first bracket, and inside quotation you need to pass the parameter name. So in my case, in range, and let's close that up with semicolon, and I'm gonna press down Control S to save my script. And now let's move over to Unity Editor. So as soon as this boss game object just gonna lose half of his health, you will able to notice that in range animation clip just gonna play. Why? Because we triggering that parameter, so that's why it's gonna play that animation clip. So just wait a moment and you will able to notice that. So let's click on this play button in the top in order to play our game, and we're gonna see that underneath our pause script, if the max health hits 3, then it's gonna play that animation clip, because we just going over to animator component of this boss game object, and then we just triggering that parameter. So let's take a look on it. So if I attack, it's became 5, 4, and then 3, and then 3. As you can see, as soon as it's became 3, it's played that animation clip, and we just get it once it hits basically once it hits something around I guess 2. So we need to check that. So I'm gonna move over to my script one more time, and we doing it over here, as you can notice. So what I'm going to do, instead of doing over here, we can do it inside update function, because update function runs every single frame. So that's why we're going to check there. So over here we're going to check. So let's make first bracket some curly brackets, and we will check if the max health, if our max health of a boss game object, if it's lesser than or equal to our in range amount. In range amount, I guess I have chosen, if I move over to in range amount 3, okay, that's fine. So in range amount, if that is the case, then we will go to animator, and now we're going to trigger that parameter, which is our which is our in range. So let's pass that over here in range, and let's close that up with semicolon, and we're gonna press down Control S to save our script. And now let's move over to Unity Editor. So once our boss game object just gonna lose half half of his health, then it's gonna play that animation clip. And you can do inside take damage function as well. Basically it's up to you. So let's click on this play button in the top in order to play our game, and let's take a look on it. So just wait a moment and you will see that. So let's damage our enemy, and we can uh, notice that it's not playing. So we need to make the transition from this boss attack, boss work, and this boss idle, instead of making from this any state. So we're gonna select that transition, and let's delete that, and we're gonna make the transition from this boss attack, boss work, or boss idle, no matter what we're doing. So we have done the mistake over here, so that's why. So let's right click on this boss underscore attack, and let's make transition to boss underscore in range, and we're gonna do these things as well, and let's do it over here, and let's move it somewhere around here, and let's select the transition from this boss underscore attack. Let's go over to inspector, and we're gonna uncheck the has exit time, and also we're gonna set it to, and then we're gonna choose that in range parameter. So if we trigger that, and I'm gonna do the same thing, we're going to choose our in range parameter. Basically if we trigger that, we want to play the in range animation clip right away, so that's why. And I'm going to do the same thing over here, and we're going to choose our in range, and we basically triggering, and now it's fine. And let's move over to our script, and now we can basically put this line of code by Control X for cut, and we can paste it inside over here inside our take damage function. And now I'm gonna press down Control S one more time in my inside my Visual Studio to save my script, and then move over to Unity Editor. So just wait a moment and it's gonna be fine. So we have done a lot of mistakes, and by doing that we just learning, and now it's gonna be fine. So I'm gonna select my boss in the hierarchy, and let's click on this play button in the top in order to play our game, and let's take a look on this. So now let's damage our boss enemy, and we can notice its plate, and then it's move it over to this boss underscore speed walk. So now what we need to do, we're gonna get out of play mode, and we will select boss underscore speed walk, and we can notice we already attached, so it's gonna be removed. So basically right click on that script and then remove, and we can attach the same script. We basically don't need to use basically we don't need to create another state machine script for this boss underscore speed walk, and we can use the same script that we created inside our boss underscore walk. And so if I select that animation clip and then move over to my inspector tab, you can see boss underscore walk state. So we can use this same state machine script over here as well. So we're gonna choose our boss underscore speed walk, and let's click on this add behavior, and we're gonna attach the same one which is our boss. So we're gonna find that by typing boss underscore work state, and we can attach that. And now what I want to increase the chase speed, because we just move it over to this boss underscore speed work. Now this enemy should be a little bit aggressive, and it's need to chase our player game object with a little bit more faster, with little bit faster. So that's why I'm gonna choose as a chase speed to something like 3.2, and also I'm gonna set the animator speed to something around 1.2, 1.5. Basically I just want to speed up, that's why. And we're gonna do the same thing with this boss underscore speed attack. So we're gonna attach the same script. So inside this we can attach the which one is boss underscore attack. So you can just right click on it and then remove. So since we already attached, so we just gonna go with that. And animator speed I just want to increase, because we just in speed attack, so that's why. So as animator speed I'm gonna choose something like 1.5, and retrieve distance I'm gonna leave with 3. And we're gonna open up our script, but you will able to notice that this boss game object not gonna play our animation clip speedily. And let me show you. So I'm gonna select my boss in the hierarchy, and let's click on this play button in the top in order to play our game, and let's take a look on it. And you will able to notice this boss game object right over here. It's gonna chase our player game object a little bit fast once our boss game object loses half of his health. So if I do that, 1, 2, and 3, and now as you can see it's chasing a little bit faster than as usual, as you can see. But the problem is that animation clip is not playing faster, and we get some error. So we're gonna get out of play mode. Basically what we need to do, we need to select the transition from this boss underscore speed walk to boss underscore speed attack, then go over to inspector, and make sure you just choose only one condition, as we have done with over here as you seen earlier. So I'm gonna select my the walk one, and let's select that, and let's remove that by clicking on that minus icon. And once we making the transition from this speed attack to speed walk, so we're gonna leave like this. Basically we're gonna leave the both of them as like that, and we can just go ahead, and we're gonna click on this play button in the top, and by now it's gonna work fine. So once you making the back transition, then make sure you choose two condition. And once you making the transition from your work to attack, then make sure you choose only one condition. So basically that is the thing. And if I attack on this enemy, it's chasing a little bit fast, and we can notice it's working fine. But the problem is that animation is not playing fastly. So for that what we need to do, we're gonna get out of play mode. And basically what we're gonna do, we just need to speed up our animation speed a little bit fast once we playing this boss underscore speed walk. So we're gonna open up our same script, which is our boss underscore attack state and the walk state. So let's get started with the walk state. So in the start of the game, we just need to set the speed. So firstly we need to go over to animator component, and now we're gonna access the speed. So dot speed, and we're gonna set the speed equal to animator speed, the variable we created over here, as you can notice. So we're gonna basically what we're doing, we're just going over to animator component of this boss and then accessing the speed of it. And now we're gonna set the speed equal to our animator speed, and let's close that up with semicolon. And we're gonna press down Control S to save our script, and we're gonna do the same thing with our attack state. So let's move over to attack state. So in the start of the game, we just want to set the speed of our animator of that boss game object. So we're gonna go over to animator, and then we're gonna access the speed of it. So animator dot speed, and set the speed equal to animator speed, that the variable we created. So that's why I just created this parameter over here. And now I'm going to press down Control S to save my script. And now let's move over to Unity editor, and you will able to notice. And I'm going to leave with one once we playing our normal work animation clip of this boss game object as one. But once we playing the boss underscore speed work and the speed attack, then I just want to make the speed a little bit fast. So if I choose my boss underscore work, then go over to inspector, then boss underscore work state, I'm gonna leave the animator speed as one, like normal, as well as the attack one. But once we move it over to boss underscore speed work, then I'm gonna choose the animator speed to something like 1.5, which I already done it, as you can see. And I'm gonna do the same thing with this boss underscore speed attack, which is 1.5, a little bit fast. And now you will able to notice that. So let's click on this play button in the top in order to play our game, and let's take a look on it. So just wait a moment and you will able to notice that. So now get closer to uh, uh, our enemy, and as you can notice, once it's entered attack range, basically, as you can see, it's playing the animation clip a little bit faster, and also it's chasing our player game object little bit faster and playing the work animation clip with a little bit speedily, as you can see. So I hope you get the idea that how you can do it. And now we need to destroy this enemy game object once it loses all of his health. So we're gonna get out of play mode. And now what we need to do, we need to play the death animation clip of this enemy game object. To do that, I'm gonna open up my boss script. So let's open that up by double clicking on it, and let's move over to die function where we destroying. So over here, as you can see, we playing the death animation clip. And now what we need to do, we basically don't need to do anything like that. Instead of choosing trigger, we need to use that set bool function as we have done inside that animator tab. So we will go to animator, and now we're going to use this set bool function in order to set the bool. And let's make first bracket, and inside quotation we need to pass the parameter name. And to check it, I'm going to move over to my Unity editor. Let's go over to animator, and then we can notice inside our animator in the left side, we created a bool parameter called death. So we need to pass the parameter name as a first argument, so in my case death. And the second thing, it's going to take the value that we want to set, so I'm going to set it to true. And let's close that up with semicolon, and we're going to press down Control S to save our script. And now let's move over to Unity editor. And once we're playing the in-range animation clip of this boss game object, then we don't want to take damage from our player game object once we're playing that animation clip. So we need to do that as well. But before we do, let's take a look on it. So let's have a look on it. So I'm going to click on this play button in the top in order to play my game, and let's take a look on this. And we can create a death state as well, so we can do that as well. So now let's make this, and it's playing, and now it's attacking with more intensely. And once it loses, it destroyed, and it's not playing the death animation clip. So let's create a death state of our death state machine of our boss enemy game object as well. So I'm going to select my boss in the hierarchy, then move over to your animator tab, and we're gonna select our death, and we just gonna select that, and let's click on this add behavior in the inspector, and let's click on this new script in the bottom, and let's call this one to something like boss underscore death state, something like that. I'm gonna call it, and after doing that, hit enter or click on this create add in the bottom, and then we're gonna double click on it in order to open that up in Visual Studio. So let's double click on that, and inside this dead state, what we want, we basically want to do one thing, and we're gonna make the transition from our from our speed walk and speed attack, instead of calling from, sorry, it's opening inside another Visual Studio. Sorry, I really apologize for that, and let's give it a moment to compile our script, because we think, and from choosing any state, we need to do it from a speed attack and a speed walk. So we're going to choose the transition from any state, and we're going to delete that. And let me show you once our compilation is done of our script, and we can just go ahead and do that. Now let's move over to Unity editor. So from this any state making the boss underscore death, so I'm going to select this as transition, and I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to make the transition from this boss underscore speed walk and this boss underscore speed attack. So let's select this boss underscore speed walk, let's right click on it, and let's make transition to boss underscore death, and we're going to do the same thing from this boss underscore speed attack, and we're going to select this transition. Let's go over to inspector, and we're going to uncheck the hash exit time, and transition duration we're going to set it to 0, because as soon as this boss game object loses all of his health, then it's need to play the boss underscore death animation clip right away. So that's why I just uncheck the has exit time, as well as I just set the transition duration to 0. And if we scroll down, we need to choose the condition, and I'm gonna choose this death condition, which is a bool parameter. So I'm gonna click on this plus icon, and I'm gonna choose death, and if death is true, then I just want to play this animation clip, and I'm gonna do the same thing with this from this speed attack to my boss underscore death. So let's do that. So I'm gonna choose my death parameter, and I'm gonna select true. And now what we're gonna do, we're gonna move over to our script. Sorry, we need to move over to our script. So I'm gonna open up my uh, death state, basically select this, and let's open up this boss underscore death state by double clicking on it. So let's open that up inside our Visual Studio. So I'm gonna remove this to you can say to function in the bottom, we don't need, and we simply just gonna use the first function. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna remove this forward slashes, and make sure you do it over here. I'm not gonna use this two function, basically the on state update, which just call as like update function over again and again, and the last one. So in the start of the game, what I want to do, I just want to set the animator speed once we playing the death animation clip of our boss game object, then I want the animation clip as normal, basically the speed of our animation. So that's why we will go to animator, animator dot speed, and what we're gonna do, we're gonna set the speed equal to 1f, basically normal speed. Normal speed, let's set equal to 1f, and also, and make sure you close that up with semicolon, press down Control S, and we need to make the transition from this boss underscore work state to attack state. So basically we need to find those animation script, and I'm not able to see. Let's move over to Unity editor, and let's check those. So just wait a moment, and I'm gonna open up my boss underscore speedwork state script, as well as the boss underscore speed attacks script. So just wait a moment, and you will see. So I hope you getting the idea that how you can make the boss fight. So now let's open that up. So I'm gonna choose my boss underscore speed work, and let's open up by double clicking on it. And I'm gonna do the same thing with my boss underscore speed attack, basically boss underscore attack state. So over here what we're gonna do, we're gonna check the max health of our boss game object. So we're gonna do it inside our update function on state update, which calls every single frame. So in the top of my on state update, I'm gonna check. So let's use if condition, then first bracket and some curly brackets. So I just want to check the max health. So to check that, what we need to do, if I move over to my boss script, basically select my boss and then go over to inspector and open up my boss script by double clicking on it. Sorry, double clicking on it. We created this max health parameter, as you can see over here. So basically we need to call the die function we created inside our boss script. So we need to mark this function as public because we're going to call this function from our underscore attack state as well as boss underscore work state. So we need to mark this function as public. So I'm going to mark this function as public, and let's press down Control S to save our script. And now let's move over to Unity editor, and we need to open up our basically what we need to do, we need to move over to our boss underscore work state script, as well as we need to open up our boss underscore attack state script. And over there we need to grab the boss script that we created inside our boss game object. So we need a reference to our boss script so we can call the die function from this boss script. So what we're going to do, we're going to open up our boss script. So let's open that up by double clicking on it, and let's go to top of our class, and that parameter doesn't need to be public, so we can make it private instead. So we're gonna make a private, and the component we're looking for is boss. So we're gonna type boss, and let's call it something like boss with non b capitalized later, and let's close that up with semicolon. And we since we made it private, so we're not gonna able to see underneath our script, but we still need to get the reference. So we're gonna do inside this on state enter function, which call in the start of the game. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna get the script. To get that, we're gonna use this animator component. So let's go to animator, and then we're gonna access the game object, and then we're gonna use this dot get component. And inside these arrows we need to pass the component name that we're looking for, or the script. So in my case, that boss, and let's make this first bracket, then close that up with semicolon. So and now what we're gonna do, we're gonna store this boss script that we got from our boss game object, and we're gonna store it inside my boss parameter that we created over here. So I'm gonna store it inside my boss, and let's set equal to this. So let me show you what we simply doing. We basically going over to this animator component of this boss game object, and by this animator component we just getting this boss script, and from this boss script basically we just going over to this boss script, and we just taking this boss script, or we getting this boss script component, and we storing this boss script component inside our this boss variable that we created over here, as you can see. Now basically we have the boss script, and now we can call the die function. Before we do, and I'm gonna do the same thing inside my boss underscore attack script. So let's press down Control S to save our script, and now let's move over to boss underscore attack state, and we're gonna call that function, call that script over here. Basically need to grab the reference. So we're gonna make a private boss, and we're gonna call this one boss, and let's close that up with semicolon. And now we're gonna grab the reference in the start of the game. So let's go to animator, then game object, and let's get the component, and the component is boss. So let's pass inside this arrows boss, and let's make first bracket, and now we have the boss script. And now we're gonna store this boss script inside our this boss variable we created over here. So let's store it there, and let's set equal to this, and we're going to press down Control S to save our script. And now we're going to move over to this if condition. Now basically we have the boss script. So if I move over to my Unity editor, I have the boss script by now, and now we need to call the function. So let's move over to our script, and we can call the boss function. Basically we can call the die function, not the boss function. So we will go to boss script. So let's go to boss script, and now we're going to access the max health, and we will check if it's lesser than or equal to 0. If that is the case, means our player game object don't have any health. Now what we need to do, we basically need to make the transition to our this state, this boss death. So I'm going to open that up by double clicking on it, and we have it over here. We also need to use this function, so let's remove this forward slashes from here. So I'm going to remove those. Let's remove this, and for this, and I'm going to do the same thing for this, and let's do it over here. And now this seems pretty much fine, and let's press down Ctrl S to save your script. So make sure you also use this function and just leave it as blank, and we're gonna press down Ctrl S to save our script. And now let's move over to Unity editor, and we have some error messages. So if I open up by double clicking on it, so let's double click on this, and we don't have it over here. Basically we have it inside our boss death. So let's remove this forward slashes, and it seems pretty much fine. And let's press down Control S. Let's go over to boss underscore attack script, and we just forgot to press Control S on our keyboard to save our script. And now let's move over to Unity editor. So by now the error should be gone, and the max health of reaches 0, then we need to make to our boss underscore death state. So we need to make transition there, and we do know that once we set that death parameter to true, then it's going to move over to our death script, you can simply say. And now it's gone. So let's open up our attack script, or basically the dead one. So over here we checking, so if the max health of our boss, if it's already lesser than or equal to 0, means our boss game object don't have any health. Now what we need to do, we need to make transition to our animator speed, sorry, death state. So we will go to animator, and we're going to use this dot set bool function, and as a first argument it's going to take the parameter name, so in our case death. And the second, it's going to take the value, so we're going to set it to true. Means we're going to move over to there, and we're going to press down Control S to save our script. And let's do the same thing from inside our boss underscore work state. So let's move over to that script, and over here, so before we chase, we just want to check the max health of our boss. So we're going to use this if condition. Let's make first bracket and some curly brackets. And what we're going to do over here, we're going to check if boss dot max health, if it's lesser than or equal to 0. So 0, then what we need to do, we need to destroy our enemy. Basically we need to make transition to our death state of our boss enemy game object. So we will go to animator, then set bool function we're going to use. Then let's make first bracket, then death, and we're gonna set it to true. And let's close that up with semicolon, and we're gonna press down Control S to save our script. And now let's move over to Unity editor, and make sure you don't make the transition from any state. It's basically giving some error, so that's why. And make the a state from your speed work and speed attack. And once you just moving over to in range animation clip, or in range state. So I hope you get the idea by now, and let's take a look on it, and it should work fine. So I'm going to select my boss in the hierarchy, and let's click on this play button in the top in order to play our game. And let's take a look on this. So just wait a moment, and it's gonna work fine. So now let's get closer to this enemy. One, two, three. It's played that. Now it's attacking more wisely, and we can attack. And now it's get destroyed. As you can see, the animation is playing over again and again because we're doing there. So we're gonna get out of play mode. So once it loses all of his health, so that time what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna choose a little bit less number. So if I select my boss in the hierarchy, then move over to my animation tab and then select my boss death, we can see after this amount of time it's destroying. So basically what we need to do, we basically need to move over to Unity editor. Let's go over to project tab, assets, and then animation folder, basically where we created those animation clip. So I have it inside my boss underscore animation. So I have all of this animation clip. We have the damage, attack, and the death one. So I'm gonna choose the death one, then go over to inspector, and I'm gonna uncheck the loop time because I don't want to play the death animation clip over again and again. So that's why make sure you select the clip, then go over to inspector and uncheck the loop time. And now if we click on this play button in the top, it's gonna work fine. And also we need to make one thing, that once we playing the in range, then we don't want to take damage at all. So we're gonna do that. So now let's get closer. If we attack, we can see it's got in range. Now it's attacking twice, and we can notice it's playing the deaths and it's gone by now, and we can destroy it right away. So I hope you get the idea. And now we're gonna get out of play mode. So once this boss game object just playing the in range animation clip, then we don't want this enemy to take damage at all from this player game object once the in-range animation clip is over. So for that, we're gonna open up our boss script. So let's open that up by double clicking on it, and let's go to top of our class, and we're gonna create a variable for that. So we're gonna create a variable, and that's gonna be a bool parameter, and we can call it something like take damage. So to just keep it just gonna keep track of if should we take damage from our player game object or not. So I'm going to make a private bool which can be true or false, and we can call this one take damage. Is boss taking damage, we can call it. So is take damage, so let's call it is take damage, and let's close that up with semicolon. And also we need to specify the time for our in range amount. So after that period of time, we just want to start taking damage from our player game object once our in range animation clip is over. So that's why, so we're gonna make a private, we can make this one public instead. So let's make this one public, and that will be float, and we can call it this one in range time. So let's call it in range time, and by default I'm gonna set equal to something like 1f or 1 second, means 1 second. And now I'm gonna move over to start function, and in this start function what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna set this is take damage to true. Why? Because in the start of the game we're gonna take the damage from this boss, from this player game object, but once we enter it in range animation clip, then we don't want. So that's why in the start of the game, I'm gonna set is taking damage, taking is take damage to true. Sorry, not taking damage, is take damage to true, and let's close that up with semicolon. And now once we taking damage, so as you can see over here, we subtracting our health from our boss game object. So before we subtract, we need to check it. So that we're gonna check if is take damage is true, is equals to true, basically means we just gonna take the damage. So we're gonna make some curly brackets. So if that is the case, then we want to take the damage. So I'm gonna press down Control X for cut, and I'm gonna paste inside over here by Control V. So if is take damage is true, and we can notice in the start of the game we set it to true, means we just gonna start taking damages from our player game object in the start of the game. But once we gonna once the in is taking damage is over, so what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna use a function called something like is taking damage. So what we're gonna do, that for that we're gonna use a basically a enumerator function. So move over to top of your class and use this namespace called using system.collection. So make sure you just go to top of your class and use this function, use this namespace called using system.collection. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a function for that, and that not going to be a normal function. Instead it's going to be a I enumerator function, because after some period of time we want to do something. So that's why if you want to do something after some period of time, then you can use that function. And to use that we need to use this I enumerator, and we need to name the function what we want to name it. So I'm going to call it something like start taking damage, something like that. I'm going to call it start taking damage. Make some first bracket and some curly brackets. So what we want to do inside this function, we want to do some certain thing, some certain things, and after some period of time we want to do some certain things. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna use this yell return new wait 4 seconds. So we need to use this, and we need to make this brackets and then close that up with semicolon. And inside this yell return new waits 4 seconds, so inside this brackets you basically need to put the time. So after this amount of time, whatever you want to do, you can do it. So I'm gonna pass my in range time over here. So in range time, so after this amount of time I just want to take start taking damage. I just want to basically once again I want to start taking damage from my player game object. So this boss game object right over here, after some period of time, basically once our in range animation clip is played completely, then we want to take damage from this player game object once again. So that's why after this amount of time, I'm gonna set is taking damage to true. But before that, basically before this amount of time, we don't want to take damage because we're playing that animation clip which is in range. So that's why is taking damage. Before that we're gonna set equal to false. And over here what we doing, we only taking damage if is taking damage is take damage parameter is true. And over here what we doing, we setting it firstly false, is take damage to false. And once our in range time is over, then once again we setting back is take damage to true. And if it's true, then we're gonna take damage. And if take damage is false, then we're not gonna take damage at all. And as you can see over here, we setting is take damage to false. So this condition over here getting false, so that's why we're not gonna subtract any health amount to from our boss game object, as you can see. But once in range time is over, then we just setting back is take damage to true, as you can see. And now we need to call the function in order to execute this line of code. And when we need to call this function, once we playing the animation clip of that in range, and we playing it over here as you can see. So once our max health reaches half health, or the in range amount, then we triggering that in range parameter which is playing the that animation clip which is our in range animation clip. So over here what we're gonna do, we're gonna call the function because we're playing that animation clip. And once we playing that animation clip which is the in range, then we don't want to take the damage. So that's why we're gonna call the function here. But this is a I enumerator function, and this function not gonna call as normal like as usual. We can directly type the function name as function name, but it's not gonna work at all. So for this I enumerator, we need to use a special function for it. Basically we need to type this start coroutine, and inside this function we need to call the function which is start taking damage. I have created over here. Now inside this bracket we need to call the function which is start taking damage. And let's make sure you make this first bracket and then close that up with semicolon. And I'm gonna press down Ctrl S to save my script. And now let's move over to Unity editor, and it's gonna work fine. So once we playing the in range in range animation clip of this boss game object, you will able to notice it's not gonna take damage at all. And for checking purposes, I'm gonna increase my in range amount, sorry, not in range amount, basically in range time. I'm gonna increase that. So just wait a moment and you will able to see, and we're gonna able to see those parameters. So first thing, just gonna pop up says in range time, in range, or we can notice in the bottom we can see in range time. So I'm gonna make it something around 5 in order to checking purposes. And now let's click on this play button in the top in order to play our game. And you will able to notice once our boss enemy game object just gonna play the in range animation clip, then it's gonna not, it's not gonna take damage any take basically it's not gonna take any damages from our player game object. So let's have a look. So if I do that, so as you can see, if I select my boss, and you gonna notice that as you can see, once we once it's played in range animation clip, it's not taking damage at all. So over here you can notice. So I'm gonna get out of play mode and let's click on this play button in the top. So for 5 seconds this boss game object not gonna take any damages from our player game object once it's playing the in range animation clip, because as a in range time we have chosen 5 and I have chosen 5 for testing purposes only. And you will see the max health just gonna stack 3 once our in range is over. So if I damage, and you're gonna see underneath your boss enemy script, and we can indeed notice that our max health reaches 0. And once it reaches 0 it just get destroyed itself. So I'm gonna get out of play mode and I'm gonna make the in range time something around 10 in order to make sure. So let's click on this play button in the top in order to play our game one more time, and let's take a look on it. So for 10 seconds this boss enemy game object it's not gonna take damage from our player game object once it's gonna play the in range animation clip. And you can notice in the inspector underneath your boss script, and we can indeed we gonna take damage. So as you can see, even though we attacking this boss enemy game object is not taking damage for 10 seconds, and once the 10 second is over, basically the in range we can notice the max health becomes 2, and if we attack one more time it's became 1, and if we attack 1 then it's get destroyed, the max health it's became 0. So I hope you get the idea then how you can do it. And I'm gonna get out of play mode. So I hope you get the idea that how you can make the boss fight, and you can make the camera shake once it's basically attacking on our player, the boss game object getting destroy itself. Then you can call the you can make the camera shake. Of course I will have a video for that as well in the description, you can go and check that out. So I hope you get the idea how you can make the boss fight, and I will see you in the next tutorial. So bye for now.